All right, it's 19 minutes past 1. It's a Tuesday afternoon, and your dial is on Joy 99.7 FM. And you can also follow the show online via facebook.com/joy99.7 FM. This is the Executive Lounge. I'm Inshira Ado. This is a show that we hope will inspire greatness in every one of you. All too soon, January has finally broken. Today is the 15th day of January in the new year, 2019. I know quite a lot of you are still getting to terms with how to make 2019 a better year than 2018 and the years previous. Today, my guest is no stranger to the studios of Joy FM. He's a proud father, a lay preacher, and he also is a professional photographer. You don't see people proudly wear that badge these days, but he makes it really cool. One of the very few whose photographs have been used by the Vatican, endorsed by Instagram. I mean, when the blue tick was coming, this guy got it out of the blue. I mean, like, we didn't even know what the blue tick was, and he was getting that. His shot for the UN AIDS, his shot for the Global Fund, Nike. He's traveled the length and breadth of this continent and this country and other parts of the world, taking photos. Covered the Ebola crisis. At the time where we're all running away from it, he was running to it to document everything that was happening. But today, he's not going to be talking to us about photography on the Executive Lounge. My guest, Nana Kofi Akwa, will be talking to us about the values that deliver value. Everything we do in life is to seek to add value to ourselves and the people around us. Businesses are to do so. This show aims to add value to your life. And so today, the question we ask is, what are the values one needs to deliver value at work, at home, and in life in general? Welcome to the Executive Lounge, Nana.
Thank you, Inshira. It's a pleasure being here.
It always is a good time to hang with you, and I'm so happy that you were able to make it. And so, New Year. Typically in business, by now, budgets are going down and targets are going the opposite direction. So you start the new year a little under pressure. You may not have met your target last year, but you're starting a new year. New targets going up, and then suddenly the resources to actually do it seem to be trimmed up a little bit. So it's like, Charlie, they do that. They put you right alongside Usain Bolt to run a 100-meter race, right? And then they say, oh, give Usain a 5-meter start. Is it possible to still deliver value in a situation like this?
I think life is complicated, and it's not going to get any easier. I mean, this may be contrary to a lot of the prophecies people received entering the new year. but there's a reason why we all keep talking about the good old days. You know, life gets harder as you go further.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like, the higher the altitude, the less the oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, for those who, I mean, I am hoping that I'll have a better year than I had last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll be naive to think it will be easy. I'll be totally naive to think it will be easy. And I think for those who really want to take this year on and make something great out of it, I think there are a few principles, I like to call them principles,
mm-hmm.
that they really would need to consider and work on. And I think principle number one for me would be that I think we all need to understand that the most expensive thing in life is ignorance.
Wow.
Ignorance is the single most expensive thing in life. Everything else is cheaper. Education is far cheaper than ignorance. In fact, the Bible has another way of putting it. It says, "For the lack of knowledge, my people perish."
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is not for the presence of the devil or the presence of witches, or
It's just the lack of knowledge.
it is mainly the lack of knowledge. You know, it's our biggest problem, and I think that a lot of people have great dreams,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually don't have the know-how of how to achieve these dreams. You know, if you meet them, they talk big, dream big, speak big, and if you grew up in church like some of us did, you learn to do the positive confession.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
The affirmations.
the affirmations.
Yeah.
Yes, you make all
I'm
these
an overcomer.
fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, above, not beneath,
Mhm.
head, not tail. All these affirmations. But if I were to ask you that exactly what action steps do you need to take
Mm.
to move from point A to point B, you'll notice that this is the biggest problem we have as a society.
Mm.
There's a huge ignorance gap. You know, most people don't know exactly what to do to move from where they are to where they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and unfortunately, this is not a conversation we have often. It's easier to speak the aspiration. You know, it's easier to declare that you'll get there, but there are action steps. One of the core principles in the Bible is a principle that seed time and harvest time will never cease. You know, so the farmer who wants to reap tomatoes must know when to plant their seed, must till the land, must get the correct tomato seeds, must understand the seasons, or must have access to water. You know, and then they plant, and then, no, of course, it's more than just planting and reaping. It's a whole process. But basically, the point is that you just don't get to the harvest.
Mm. So seed time
Yes.
and harvest, these are constants.
Yes.
That no matter what you do,
Yes.
if you plant, you
reap.
harvest.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you may plant with knowledge.
Yes.
So the difference between a good yield
Yes.
and maybe a not so good yield
Yes.
is the ignorance gap.
Yes. It's really, for example, the person hawking pure water
Mm-hmm.
in the street and the person who owns the Voltic brand, they are both in the water business.
True.
You know,
At the end of the
difference-
day, they give you the same thing. Water.
Yes, water. You know, I want to sell water. Fundamentally, these are their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference in the one who owns the Voltic brand and the one who doesn't is knowledge. The core difference is knowledge. Of course, sometimes in life you find people who have the head knowledge but take no action. That is another problem. But in our society, I think Ghanaians are the hardest working people on earth. Most Ghanaians wake up by 4 a.m. You know, you hear your neighbors sweeping from 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. They are sweeping. They are going out there to hustle. They'll come back late at night. These are hardworking people. So it is not if we are poor. I saw this sign on this vehicle that said, "If hard work makes you rich, why is the donkey poor?" You know, so hard work is not enough. You know,
It takes a little more than that.
It takes a whole lot more than just hard work.
Okay. So your first principle you've outlined that you think is that leads to the value
Yes.
that would deliver value
Yes.
is that
Fill the knowledge
fill
gap.
the knowledge gap.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. So there was a time I ran into a photographer. This is somebody with a camera walking around looking for business, calling himself a photographer. And I looked at his lens on his camera and I said, "Oh, what's the aperture?" I think it was quite an old lens. So I was trying. So what's the aperture, the widest aperture of your
You'll
lens?
get on this,
And he
yeah.
looked at it and said, "What is aperture?"
Huh?
Yes. He said, "What is aperture?" I mean, I was happy to educate him, but I thought, you know, if you say this is your business,
And you don't know
and you don't know, I mean, this is very, very fundamental knowledge, and you don't know this, how much research, how much learning have you done into this so-called career of yours? You know, I mean, and this actually cuts across. You know, for example, that about 80% of the people who died in the hospitals in Africa, not just Ghana, basically about 80%, would not die if they had shown up in Europe or America with the same conditions.
True.
You know, so why do they die here when their lives could be saved in another environment? So we tend to underrate knowledge. You know, we tend to underrate knowledge. There's this joke about if you want to hide something from the African, put it in a book and all that. You know, it's a big issue. We totally downplay knowledge, and it costs us heavily.
Okay.
You know? I mean, why do why do you sit on gold and beg for brass as a nation? Why is it that anytime we discover some minerals in our soil or oil in our waters, we wait for people from Europe and America to bring machines to come and explore, to tell us, we are here. We can't tell where the oil is. So somebody else will come with their machines and their knowledge to come and explore for us and tell us how many wells we have and probably how much is in there, and then do the drilling for us, and then basically take away maybe 90% or more of the money, and then give us peanuts, and we are comfortable with that. Our biggest problem as a nation is the knowledge one.
Wow. Big principle. Ignorance is the single most expensive thing that could happen to any man, woman, or society. It's 30 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge with my guest, Nana Kofiako, professional photographer, and a man who's passionate about Ghana and development. I couldn't think of anyone better to have this conversation with. And again, thanks for joining us. Now, beyond filling the knowledge gap, you said something quite instructive that, there's a process.
Yes.
That in seed time and harvest,
Yes.
between seed time and harvest, there's a certain process.
Yes.
So the process that informs when you irrigate, informs when to plant, how to till the land and prepare it to receive the seed and all of those things. Why is process so important? And in your opinion, how will that impact on building up to delivering value?
Okay, so this is the power of process. Everything God designed, He designed by process and set up as a system. So God thinks in terms of systems. So, for example, if my wife conceives and gives birth, we say that God has given me this child. But you see, the process, the system of conception, He created right from the beginning. So if a man has intercourse with a woman who is ovulating, there'll be pregnancy, and it's a process. And then after 9 months, you'd have a baby. So if you go to the first book of the Bible, which is Genesis, right from the beginning, you see things like, and the morning and the evening and the morning was the first day, and the evening and the morning was the second day, and the evening and the morning was the third day, and the evening and the morning was the fifth day, and God works in systems. So the opposite of systems, in my view, is miracles. The challenge, I believe in miracles. I've seen God do many miraculous things. The problem with miracles is that they are very hard to replicate.
They're fixed for the moment.
Fantastic. And you can't replicate them. But if you uncover the science of something, so if you know that hydrogen plus this will give me that, you can do that experiment 1,000,000 times. You get the same results. And as a people, unfortunately, and I'll say this again, if you go to church, we are in a hurry for the miracle. We are hardly ever taught the principles. There are principles to success. There are things you can actually do. You're in January. I don't know what anybody's specific dream is. But for example, if you're a young photographer and you want to become a world-class photographer or a world-class reportage photographer, photojournalist, documentary, whatever you want to call yourself.
That's right.
There are specific action steps that if you take, can take you there within a certain amount of time. And if you repeat those steps 1,000,000 times, you will get the same results. And this is how God designed the world. So anybody who doesn't respect processes and doesn't understand systems is bound to fail. There is a reason why you can give me your car keys and I'll just sit in and drive. Because the car works by principles. So if I've been taught to drive, once I sit in the car, I know what to look for, where to insert the key, start the ignition, what to step on, and it will move. If I do that 1,000,000 times,
you'll get the same
I'll get the same results.
outcome. Yeah.
And that is how cultures that progress. That is how people who progress. Anybody who prays and believes that something great should happen, but is not interested in learning the process to do it, cannot. How do you measure the success when it happens? And how do you know why you failed if all you did was pray that it happens or believe that it will happen? So when you succeed by accident. And but the surest.
And then
thing,
it's difficult to replicate.
of course, it's impossible to replicate. You know.
Wow. Interesting. So when you're done filling the knowledge gap, respect processes.
Yes.
Unleash the power of process.
Yes.
It's explain further how process impacts on good delivery of value. To someone who's sitting at work today, I've come to work. This is my first week back from the holiday.
Yes.
I have my brief for the year.
Yeah.
My targets have gone up.
Yeah.
How do I deliver value
Yes. So
through process?
Fantastic. So, for example, for people in the work environment who want to do well, normally my first advice is that be useful. You see, normally you go to a work environment and somebody says, "This is my job description." You know, well, fixing the picture on the wall is not part of your job description, but it's crooked. So everybody walking in through the front door sees this crooked art piece hanging around. It takes you a second to fix it. It takes you 2 seconds to prompt a colleague on something that is actually their job. I tell people that, listen, we can complicate life, but one of the things I have learned is that nobody wants to get rid of an employee who is useful. Recently I took an Uber, and the driver was an accountant for a hotel. And he was complaining, I mean, very typical Ghanaian, complaining about the job, and he either has quit or wants to quit, and this, that. And then I started talking to him about usefulness, you know, that in life, the single most important gift you can be to anybody or any organization is to be useful. And then he said, you know, there was something that had always bugged him. He worked for a company, a hotel, where as an accountant, and he said the owners of the hotel, both the husband and the wife who own the hotel, are accountants. Now, when business was difficult, when the hotel was going through difficult times, they started laying staff off. But they never laid him off. And he didn't understand why, because he knew that for all the jobs, he was the most, you know, they could easily...
Because between the two of them, they could fire the accountant and run the books.
And he said, but there was one thing he did for the company that no other employee could do. They had the bus, and when guests come into the country,
he could drive the shuttle.
He was the only one who could drive the shuttle. So even though he was a qualified, I mean, I met him driving an Uber. So this guy obviously is a good driver. He was the only employee who could drive the company shuttle.
Wow.
You know, and I said yes. So that is why they couldn't fire you. You thought, you know, you went to all these fancy schools to get all these chartered whatever in accounting, and you think that this is, but actually the reason why your employer kept you was because you're a very good driver.
Okay, so I'm counting, this is principle number 3.
Yes.
So 1, fill the knowledge gap. Don't be ignorant. 2 is respect process. And 3 is be useful.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Because really, you know, it takes me back to, I mean, things that are not of use, you discard, right?
Yes.
And if you're going to be able to deliver value, your usefulness would be a source of delivering value for your business.
Yes.
And being useful works, whether you're at home, at church,
anywhere,
in any relationship.
No, don't underrate the power of usefulness. We don't think about it, you know, because unfortunately in our system, we like certificates. So you enter an office and the person has 10, 20 certificates. Sometimes even on their WhatsApp profile, you see all the
listed. Yes.
listed there. But to people like me, because I am a creative, for all the creative industries, certificates are totally useless. In fact, we take courses, very expensive professional courses for which there are no certificates. If you need help, we'll help you build a portfolio. You know, we want you to show what you can do, what you're capable of, not what you've studied.
Right.
Because certificates are totally useless.
So it's in the doing, it's not just knowing.
Life rewards you for what you do. You know, it's really as simple as that. You know, so the person, how do I put it? Okay, so I'm Ghanaian, I grew up in this culture. And a lot of the times I feel that what education robs us of is that it gives us all these airs, you know. So I remember when I was employed at Lentas, I thought, I had arrived. I came from radio, and when you're on radio, you have a lot of fans who tell you you are doing great things. And you think you're good enough. You think you know what you're. And then I get there, and then I have a creative director that I was more educated than, but he was a million times more knowledgeable than I was. And that was meeting Colin Charles was my first encounter with the fact that education must not stop with when you leave school, that you can actually self-educate. And Colin Charles was reading every single day, learning every single day. And this is somebody you also know personally.
That's right.
This is somebody who dropped out of school at the age of 15 or 16. But he was one of the most intelligent, knowledgeable people you'd ever
And
meet.
as a creative director of a multinational agency.
Of course. Colin Charles. In fact, if you go around asking a lot of Ghanaians, what are the most iconic adverts they remember in this country's
You'll
history?
remember.
They would mention a few that were actually produced by Colin Charles.
That's true.
And they wouldn't even know he was the brain behind it. So we need to stop celebrating all these education for its own sake and start thinking in terms of usefulness. I mean, for example, there was a time in Den Haag in Holland where I saw the Prime Minister of Holland going to work on a bicycle. And then another time I go to the parliament, have a meeting with some parliamentarians, and then one of them started making jokes about our parliamentarians, our Minister for Agric at the time, going to beg for money. And at some point I'm like, okay, so we drive fleets of V8s to go and beg for money from people who go to work on bicycles. Why? And why are we even comfortable begging? Considering all the resources God has given us as a people. Holland has nothing. I used to make a joke that if I got angry, I could run around the whole country of Holland in a couple of days. It's a very small country, and they had nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, really don't have much. Okay? But we will go and borrow money from them. We have the gold, the bauxite, the manganese mentioned. We have all of that. All we would do is dress, wear three-piece suits, speak big English and all that, and go and borrow money and justify why we need to borrow because everybody borrows. It's a cultural mindset, and I think maybe if there's a fourth point, it will be about culture.
Okay.
There's another principle in the Bible where in Genesis where it says, and when God created it said everything produces after its kind. It's a principle that is very important. So I'll talk about that in relation to culture, but also if you want to move into a system that is better, so let's also label that as the power of association.
Okay.
So, for example, if you are born in this culture, there is a way you see the world. It is part of being Ghanaian. Obviously, considering our progress on the continent, our cultures are better than some. But if we are competing with the world, these things hold us back. In fact, there's a book called Culture Matters that I think every African leader needs to read.
Culture matters.
And it tells you why in 1960, South Korea and Ghana had the same GDP. And 15 years, 20 years down the line, their GDP was 15 times ours. And it's gotten worse
Over time, yeah.
Over time. And it's rooted in culture. And everything. So basically, this is how the principle works. If you take your child to a Ghanaian school, and the child is taught by teachers who were raised in this culture, and your dream is that you want that child to become president of the World Bank, you need a miracle. Because basically, the child will be taught in a system that would mean that they will end up becoming like the person who taught them. It's dangerous, But what this also means is that, for example, let me find another way of explaining this principle. So let's say I love music. I love reggae music. I can decide that I would want to associate and be an apprentice to one of these local reggae artists. Or I could also become an apprentice to Bob Marley. Now, the simple question is, if I join Bob Marley's band and I join some local reggae artist's band, which of these two bands do you think will teach me more?
So the association takes you into new environments.
Fantastic.
Stretches you.
It stretches you. It takes you. In fact, for example, I'll give you an example of this. When I joined Lolintas, because it was really my first introduction to a company that had a very international worldview. And then at the time, we were pitching for some job, and for 3 days we were at work.
Wow.
And Noko was there with us. This is our MD. She was there with us for the 3 days. Basically making sure that we get it right, working and stuff. It changes your work attitude. It changes your worldview when you realize that people who are far ahead of you are killing themselves to, and I mean, there are many of these examples. So if you are not, so one of the things I would want people to take, and this is very important, if you have a dream, if you want to be a great broadcaster, one of the best FM stations in this country is Joy FM. I would rather come here as a cleaner, just for the opportunity to learn and associate, than get a fancy job in some radio station that is going nowhere. Because if I go to the one going nowhere, they will make me after their kind. But if I come here as a cleaner and I get to interact with you, interact with the others, and I get to learn, you'll make me after your kind. And this is a life principle.
Wow. So in order to deliver value to your business, to yourself, to society,
Yes.
it's not just about, knowing.
Yes.
And also being useful and respecting process, but more importantly, the people you associate
Yes.
with.
Let me give
and is it about direct association? Were you
That's a
always
good question.
interacting with
That's a
people
good question.
directly?
Sometimes, I mean, if you can get access to direct association, it is the best form of association. Sometimes we don't have that privilege, but we can read books. We can go on the internet. We can find many other ways to associate. But if you have a way of getting direct association, please take it, capitalize on it. And I wanted to make this as practical as possible, because sometimes you say these things and people think you're going to read some theory So in 2002, I knew that I got introduced to photography. By 2007, photography was all I wanted to do. So I became creative director for TBWA, but I knew that all I wanted to do was photography. Okay. So that's 2007. This is what, 11 years later. Next week, I am going to be part of the jury for the World Press Photo.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So the question...
Doesn't get any better.
Yes. So the World Press Photo competition is the biggest press, photojournalism, documentary, photography competition in the world.
Is the Nobel Peace Prize for photography.
Fantastic. So the question is, how do you move from being somebody who is interested in photography in 2007? I mean, you are an enthusiast. That would be the best description. To becoming part of the jury. And if you look in that chain, you'll discover that I did a master class with the World Press Photo in Angola in 2009. You know, I did one with NOR is one of the best photo agencies in the world. In Lagos at some point. I did a master class in Groningen, where I had to buy my own ticket 3 times in a year.
Wow.
Book my own hotel to go and study. There was no scholarship to go and study.
And pay for the lessons
and
itself.
Pay for the lessons itself. There was a time when I took a course with this professional, and I had to pay him 480 euros a day.
Wow.
Yes. So you know, but this is the price to pay. You can't pray your way around that. You can't fast your way around that. If you want to move from, oh, I'm an African photographer nobody knows, to I'm part of the jury for the World Press Photo, there is a price to pay.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. I like the fact that you say you like the practice, and you know, quite often people talk about things that are very detached from their reality.
Yes.
But if I look at the principles you've shared so far,
Yes.
from being an enthusiast, you filled the knowledge gap.
Yeah.
Okay, so you invested in master classes.
Yes.
Of course, I'm
books.
sure.
I have countless books on
yes,
photography.
and usefulness, right?
Yes.
I want to come back to the usefulness bit.
Okay.
Because I'm a photo enthusiast.
Yeah.
I can't call myself a pro photographer because
You're good, though. You're good.
I'm just. But I learned a lot from you.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, yeah.
and that's the usefulness bit I wanted to come to.
Okay.
That usefulness. In the earlier description, imagery you painted, it was about, okay, so I walk into work. There's a picture frame that's a
Yeah.
little crooked. I can fix it.
Yeah.
Usefulness from a position of superior knowledge and experience, or even power and influence
Yes.
in an organization.
Yeah.
How do you do usefulness from top down?
That's an interesting question. Usefulness from top down. Okay, so whilst I think through doing usefulness from top down,
Yeah.
And because you mentioned usefulness again, recently we went to play squash,
That's right.
and it was interesting, and I introduced you to the best squash player in this country, and
That's
said,
right.
if you want anybody to be your coach, make this guy your coach, because not only is he the best in the country, it's an introduction. That is me being useful. You like squash. If you get better, get great, I have a squash partner for life.
That's
One
right.
of the hardest things to find is somebody to play squash with.
True.
A lot of Ghanaians run from it. But when I talk about usefulness, I'm also talking about things like when I'm with Ghanaians, things. Okay, so now a lot know how to drive, but quite a number don't. They don't know how to type. You won't believe it, but something as simple as my typing speed helped me get a job in a newsroom, and I wasn't a secretary or anything. There was a time I was in a meeting. I had to have a quick meeting, and I had to write a script, and so I was typing. My script and
Having the meeting.
and having the meeting, and the guy looked on my computer, and I wasn't looking on the screen. So he thought, and then he looked. So Eric looked and he said, "Wow, I can't believe this. You're actually typing, and you're not even looking on the screen." But it's a skill I picked when I was in the university because, well, I had a bit of time, so I could pick it. And how many Ghanaians know how to swim?
Yeah.
With the oil business, all of a sudden I saw people come into the club who want to take quick swimming lessons because they were going to apply for a company, a job in an oil, and it is a requirement. But all these skills make you useful. And if it comes to top down, the big thing with being at the top is that you also tend to be an example. At the end of the day, everybody looks to leadership. And if you find a leader who is useful and, basically, you have a job, you're doing something, but if you're not there, they can do it themselves. It makes the team sit up. Sometimes when I'm hanging with Ghanaians, I'm like, so what are your hobbies? You don't know how to do anything. They can't swim, they can't play table tennis, they can't play squash, they can't play lawn tennis, they can't play snooker, nothing. I'm like, so how do you even entertain yourself? From work, I hope you understand. So I want people to think of living. This year, decide to live fully. Yes, targets are great and all that, but decide to live fully. Have a life that is wholesome. It's meaningful, it's refreshing. Come to Kokrobite where I live. Come and learn to surf. We have Bright and Co there who teach people to surf.
So we're surfing on our beaches now.
Yes,
That's nice.
we surf. Yes, come. We'll give you lessons. You can come and surf. Learn how to ride a motorbike. Learn something new. Move out of your comfort zone. Ignorance will do you more harm than all the witches in your family, the so-called witches.
Who themselves probably don't even know how to deal with you. So because they're also ignorant.
Yes, we as a nation, listen, I love Ghana. We are great people, and I think that we can even do far better. And so sometimes when I talk like this, people go like, "Oh, it's criticism." No, I'm not. It's not a criticism.
It's the truth.
It's the truth, and I know that we can do better. Listen, sometimes you go to a conference with a Ghanaian or a few Ghanaians and other people, and then in the evening, you can't find the Ghanaians. They've all gone to their room to sleep.
Yeah.
Once it comes to socialization, um, they can't. Well, dancing we try, but no, there's.
You just made me take a trip back into time. There was some event, and there were some Ghanaians, So, I mean, you travel to these things, and the menu that is brought is, of course, not your bangkung or and I'm looking at the menu and I'm asking questions.
Yeah.
Because I want to try everything that's on there, right?
You should.
And then there are people who are thinking, no, I don't want this, I don't want that, I don't want this, I don't want that. I remember I have a certain aversion to fish.
Okay.
Especially when it's nearer the raw state.
Okay.
So this really nice salmon on a bed of vegetables and all of that. I was like, So I said, I'm going to try this. If these human beings can eat this, me too, I'll eat it.
Of course.
So I tried it, and it was so nice. Now, guess what? In the end, those who didn't eat theirs, it was a starter. So I ate all the salmon. It was really nice. But they passed on an opportunity to add a percent of knowledge.
Of course. Try it.
Wow.
Try it. If you don't like it, at least you know that I don't like this. But try it. We are risk averse.
Too much, except when we're promised something else.
Yes, and it's quite a shame. But let's all decide we're going to live. Let's invest in knowledge. Sometimes it would mean that coughing up 480 euros a day, but it's worth it. It's yes, you work months to save it, but invest in quality education, not in certificates. I mean, I would rather pay you to teach me how to do what you do than go and take a course, go to a school for radio and this thing, where no active working radio
and come out with book knowledge and not know how to really function.
No, me, those things are not important for me.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, we have run out of time. You and I, we can shoot the breeze the whole day, but I'm so happy that you were able to make this.
Thank you
and I'm sure that our audience would have, benefited greatly from, the conversation that we've had. I'm just going to sum up what you said. Essentially, is that the first principle, if you're looking to create a value system that delivers value, is that you should shy away from ignorance. Fill that knowledge gap. Learn. Constantly learn. One of my lecturers in college said, 1% is all you need. He says, every day strive to get 1% of knowledge, something extra on what you already have. Number 2 is that respect process. Seed time and harvest, constant. You will plant, you will reap. But between reaping good and reaping little is knowing and following the process. So you don't plant before you till the land. You till before you plant. And so respect process if you want to see, and be useful, which is the third one. And then the fourth one is the power of association. If you think about the principle that, chickens lay eggs out of which chickens come, and everything, a mango tree yields mangoes with mango seeds. So we produce after our kind. It's important that in associating yourself, you must be aspirational.
Yes.
And if you want to stay where you are, associate with the people. If you want to move to the next level, associate with them. And if you get direct association, grab it. If you don't, please look for ways to interact with the people and their minds and their exploits. Read books, go on the internet, read blogs. And the final thing is that we should live fully. Actually, living fully means learning new things and just adding value to yourself.
Yes. Fantastic.
Nana Kofi Akwa.
Yes, my brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the news is up next. Mama V Oswa Boaji is somewhere out there going over her script, and then drive time follows after that. So it's been a good afternoon. Go forward, make rain. Shalom. I leave you with one of my very favorite songs. Nana, this one is dedicated to you and to your wife Gloria.
Thank you.
This one is from the guy called King Promise, CCTV. Have a good day.
Thank you.